did you get these questions that were submitted to you?
There's a frequently asked questions like Google Doc that somebody made and people have just been dumping questions into randomly. So I took some from there, and then there were only like, 2 or 3 questions that came in from whatever it's called.
Yeah.
The form.
The form. Yeah, because I was wondering, like, I didn't see that.
I can share that link with you if you like. Oh no, did I just stop the recording? Oh, let's see. Okay, I put the link to the frequently asked questions in the chat if you wanted to look.
Got it. Victor.
Okay, here we go. All right, we've got about 2 minutes. And I'm going to get some water. I'll be right back.
Good.
Exciting.
I didn't know if that was you guys or if you guys had ever Yeah, last time we did it, I think it was like, 50.
All right, we'll wait maybe another 2 minutes or so folks can join us. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Cool.
So where can I go to this thing? Because I went to the 1000 Conversations YouTube channel and I found a previously recorded conversation between Rebecca and Laraya.
What are you looking for this live?
Looking for this one,
Let me see if I can just share.
It should be like when you go on the channel, it says "What's up with the Green New Deal" live. Like,
I see that. Yeah.
Laura, are you able to see if people are currently watching? I accidentally closed the window.
5 are watching right now. Yeah.
All right, best behavior, guys. Welcome to our 5 biggest fans.
6 now. 6. We have 6.
All right. Well, the first 10 get, the greatest high five. All right.
And a protein bar.
Oh, wow. We really treat everybody really nicely around here. All right. You want to get started?
Sure, I can do that.
Okay.
I don't know what time is it. 12:02. Yeah. So
12:03. All right.
Let's go for it.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Welcome to 1000 Conversations About Our Future, project of the Ithaca Green New Deal that aims to engage you in a conversation about the future of Ithaca. And I am your lovely and charming host, coming at you live from my front porch in downtown Ithaca, New York. I'm Rebecca Evans, sustainability specialist with the city of Ithaca. And this series is going to feature experts about kind of the nerdier, geekier side of the Green New Deal. So we're talking about tech, economics, electrification, jobs, all the stuff that really makes the Green New Deal tick. And I am here to assure you that there will definitely be nerds and geeks here to talk to you. One of the geekiest of which is here with us today. Some panelists are going to be local, some will not, but all are going to be experts in their field and are going to be here to answer your questions about the Ithaca Green New Deal and the trajectory of Ithaca into the future. So we're going to leave the chat open on YouTube. Feel free to toss your questions in there as they come into your brain, and we will funnel them into Luis so that he can answer them. We'll try and answer all questions as best as we possibly can. And if we don't get to them, we will be recording these questions as well. So we will follow up with you. So please do interact with us with questions, comments, concerns, anything, and we will do our best to answer. So without further ado, I guess let's get this thing started. This next conversation is going to be about nothing other than what's up with the Green New Deal. What is the progress that's been made thus far? And like I said, we have the geek of all geeks here to talk about it. Luis Aguirre-Torres, the Director of Sustainability for the City of Ithaca, is here to give us an update.
The geek of all geeks. Thank you. I really appreciate that introduction. I think it's quite unique. And thank you, everybody. Thank you, Laraya, also for all your help in putting this together. I think part of what we want to do is engage the community, have a conversation with the community. So right now what we're doing is we have this session live. It's going to be every 2 weeks on Wednesday at noon. It's not going to be just me or us. We're going to invite other people, and the idea is for people to join us. At times we're going to open the Zoom link so everybody can join in a more interactive fashion. At times we're going to do it through the YouTube channel, and when we do it through the YouTube channel, you're going to have the possibility of getting, participating in the chat and getting some, to ask some questions directly to us. So right now, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to go over, the Green New Deal. Then, some of you have sent questions already. So I'm going to try to answer them. I may not have an answer for all of them, but I'll do my best. And then I'll be interested in your feedback. You can do it through the chat. You can, send us an email. You can, figure out ways of contacting us. You know who we are, where we live, it's scary, but you do. So anyway, I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to start this presentation, and I'm going to take you through, what the Green New Deal is today. So here is Ithaca Green New Deal. This is the latest iteration. And once again, I like to start reminding people that this is something that the City of Ithaca Common Council approved on June 5th, 2019. On that day, that's when, our Common Council decided that we need to get serious and fight climate change, economic inequality, and racial injustice. And that was all cool. But, a lot of things has happened since June 5th, 2019 and now. But a lot of the time, people ask me, what is it, why is it called an Ithaca Green New Deal? So, we derive, inspiration from, something that happened on the same year in Washington when, first year Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, together with Senator Markey, together, they presented this as an idea. What if we were to retake these ideas from 1933 when, the economy was terrible, society was, not getting along, and, everybody had doubts about the future. Why don't we retake the strength that we actually had at that time, and we, recreate that effort that we had as a country, as a community, and we try to bring about the new green economy. It was a cool idea. Obviously, it was very difficult to get it through Congress, but the idea really wasn't to get it to Congress. The idea was always to have, to have people, participate in this. I mean, it's one of the most beautiful democratic engagement process that you will ever find, when you're asking people to engage in transforming the economy and making this a better place for everybody else. So, I mean, if we really go back to the New Deal, and this is so people understand what we're talking about. Around 1933, I think it was, when FDR decided that, things were not sustainable. At that moment, the economy was terrible. And once again, there was a lot of unemployment. People were not getting along. this, as you might recognize, was a very complicated period in human history. So, the president had the vision that, we can change things. We just need to make a new deal, and we need to figure out how to take care of the elderly, the youth, how we take care of all the unemployed, how do we transform industries, how do we restrict, financial institutions from causing more damage, but at the same time, we inspire other types of institutions to be part of a change. So, it was a successful endeavor. At the end of the day, it did affect things. It changed things, the way we were doing things, and I thought that was very interesting. But around that time, and this is something that it's part of the inspiration of the Green New Deal. It's something that we don't talk too much about. But around the time of the Ithaca Green New, around the time of the original New Deal, there was something going on also in Oklahoma that actually inspires a lot of what we do in the Green New Deal today. Around 1932, there was this company that was trying to sell ice in Oklahoma, and there was the new state ice company that was, approved to sell ice in the state. So they decided that, what, I don't think we should allow anybody else to sell ice in our states. So they actually sued this other company, and it ended up all the way to the Supreme Court. And when it made it to the Supreme Court actually sided with the new state ice company. But there was one dissent. There was one justice that was like, I don't think this is right. Because what he was saying is that, if it is not for the state to experiment, if it is not for the state to figure out ways of advancing, innovation, social innovation, economic innovation, then how are we going to do this? He was talking about the importance of states, cities, municipalities like Ithaca to actually make, an effort to be innovative and to look at different ways of doing things. And I think that is the most beautiful quote that we can have from any justice in the United States, because it really means that, it is our job to innovate. It is our job to be different. And talking about innovation, another inspiration that we derive in order to implement and go with the Green New Deal is this book. And if you haven't read it, I recommend that you guys go at it, because definitely this is one of the best books that I have read about, how we're going to deal with sustainability and everything that the future, has for us. In this book, there is a Yale professor that is basically calling for a change in the way we look at environmental protections, because for a really long time, since 1970, really, we've been looking at the environmental regulatory system as a way of banning people from doing things. But what if we were to continue doing that? What if we were to ban people from harming people and corporations, from creating harm or from having negative externalities? But at the same time, what if we were to incorporate elements to regulatory frameworks and legislation that would actually inspire, social, civil society and corporations and individuals to innovate and to look at the environment at the same time that we're looking at the economy, and try to make sure that our goals, economic, social, and energy goals and environmental aspirations, they're all aligned. What if we were to change the way we're looking at the role of government, the role of legislators, public service commission? What if we were to actually, start again and think differently? Because things continue to move forward, but us that are here at the forefront of this fight, we also need to evolve, and we need to, as Justice was saying before, we need to figure out better ways of battling those that don't believe in climate change, or that believe it's happening, but because of a convenient reason they don't participate in this. So then, I'm talking about how things have evolved. And another thing that is really important is what happened in 2015 when we had this, Juliana versus the United States, which is when this bunch of kids, 21 kids from Oregon and Washington State, decided to sue the U.S. government because, what we have been doing, it had been causing damage to the environment, and it was, accelerating climate change, and it was affecting their future. And it was one of those things that a lot of people dismiss as just silly. But the reality is that somebody actually decided that, it's not my fault. And I really think that the US government should bear some responsibility for what's happening. And I really thought that it was a beautiful thing, because even though it didn't move forward, even though the court decided it is not for the court to decide this, it is mostly for the states, it is mostly for the legislative branch and executive branches to actually address this issue. Because then, if you think about the whole thing, how in 1932 we decided that, it is for the state, for municipalities, for the government, for civil society to innovate, to think differently. And then you have Professor Este from Yale saying, and we need to look at it with innovation. We need to inspire innovation. We need to change the way we look at things. And then we have a decision from the Supreme Court saying it is for the state, for legislative branch and executive branches to actually look at climate change and try to solve the problem. It's not for the courts. So when all that comes together, you think, well, we need to start looking at the world differently. And then there is the vision, which is absolutely inspiring, from the economist Mariana Mazzucato, who actually is talking about, everything that we are all talking about. How, in 2020, we had this health crisis. At the same time, we had a social crisis, and we have now an economic crisis. And then when they all combine, what we have is a problem that we have never seen as humanity. So we cannot try to tackle these problems in the same way that we've been tackling them before. We need to change our attitude. We need to change our perspective. We need to change the way we work together. So that's why we need to start looking at the problems that we have today, but stop using ideas from the past. We need to look forward, and we need to start thinking, I can fix this, but I cannot really rely on what I used to do. We need to think about it differently. And there was this reminder in July when the IPCC produced this report saying, the world is on fire. We need to change the way we look at things. We need to change the way we're approaching this because we have less time than what we thought. It all combines at the end and leads to think, God, we really need to do something. So the Ithaca Green New Deal is precisely that. It probably it's not that all of these came together at the time that we were trying to pass this with Common Council. But the reality is that right now, what we need to do is to be innovative, to think about government in a different way, to think about the relationship that government has with society in a different way, to think about solutions that could work, and to stop thinking about those solutions that are no longer working. We need to start, thinking differently. And this is really, really what the Green New Deal is about. If we were to summarize this, what the Ithaca Green New Deal is all about, it is reducing carbon emissions. And we're going to do that once we get rid of fossil fuels. And how about elevating social justice, climate justice, environmental justice? What if we were to do those two things at the same time? That is, what if we were to enable a fair, just transition to a new green economy where fossil fuels are not part of the equation anymore? So that's what the Green New Deal is about. So if I were to put words into it, I would say that, it is very similar to these gigantic efforts that we have made as society. For example, in 1962, President Kennedy said, we're going to make it to the moon. And he decided that we're going to do something really difficult, something really hard, something that nobody has ever tried before. It was a mission-oriented order by the president. We're going to make it to the moon one day. And this is not different. We're talking about a complete transformation of the economy. We're talking about doing something that nobody has ever done before. And also the recognition that it's not possible for government or for society or for the business community to do it alone. It is a collaborative effort. If we're going to really reach carbon neutrality, we need to do it together, but we need to redefine these relationships that we have. And at the same time, we need to think about why we're doing this. We're not doing this to advance technology. We're not doing this just out of, pure ingenuity. What we need to do is to think, this is for people. This is for people, and people is what we really need to think when we are trying to develop any strategy. And we need to think about the return to this strategy in social terms, not in economic terms, because at the end of the day, that's what will allow us to elevate what we call social capital, those principles that make us who we are, and that we have in common. And at the end of the day, what we're looking for is really a new world, to define a new economy that is more just and that could lead to sustainable prosperity. Also, we're talking about, mobilizing public sector capabilities. We're talking about something very different. The city of Ithaca government is right now, presenting this Ithaca Green New Deal as a way of promising and acting, promising to the community that we're going to act and we're going to fight climate change to the best of our abilities, but we cannot do it alone. We need to do it with you. So this transition actually can happen. And also in recognition that this is a problem that everybody's facing, the entire planet is facing, and people are changing their approach. Right now, we need to look at things in a more holistic way. We need to look at every aspect, because if we fix this, we may be breaking something else. We need to look at everything. And for that, we need to engage society. We need to move to a model of stakeholder governance, one in which everybody not only has a say, but everybody has participation, not only the definition of the solution, but the implementation of the solution. So that's what the Green New Deal is right now. We actually, develop a whole theory of change around the Ithaca Green New Deal. I'm not gonna, entertain a lot in this, but I want to tell you that, we started thinking about this, thinking about the impact that was needed. We need to elevate social capital. We need to promote sustainable prosperity. We need to promote an equitable and just economic model for everybody. So we started there, and then we started devising a plan that could take us from where we are, considering all the inputs, that is the current status quo, and how we're gonna get there. And it is a 10-year plan. It's not an easy plan. It's something that we need to do, and we need to do together, and it's gonna take us a while. We're lucky because we're in the state of New York, and not only that, because we're on the side of the state of New York that actually has the cleanest electricity, and it is an area where, there is a lot of political support for everything that we want to do. The state has very important goals for 100% zero emission electricity by 2040. And the emissions that we see in the state are not very different from the ones that we see in the city of Ithaca. Because, what we have is true, it's a different economy. We don't really have heavy industry as such. We do have some industry, but we don't have what the state as a whole has. But, if we were to identify 98% of the emissions, it would be from these sources. It's from transportation, it is from buildings, mostly from space heating, water heating, and also it is from electricity generation. I mentioned before, we're in the part of the electric grid that actually relies on a lot of carbon-free electricity. But at the end, what we need to do is to do, cross-cutting implementation of strategies such as energy efficiency, the decarbonization of the electric grid, introduction of renewable energy, and we need to figure out ways of capturing, CO2. So what we're trying to do is to figure out how we can get rid of 400,000 metric tons of CO2. Imagine this equivalent to, roughly 100,000 vehicles running. So that's the equivalent to the emissions that we have in the city of Ithaca. And also when I mentioned, we need to figure out how to do this, using cross-cutting measures. What I mean is we just don't have the time to go after every single vertical industrial sector. We actually need to think differently. We need to think horizontally. We don't need to think in hierarchical terms as we used to. So we need to think differently. So I think, okay, what if we were to look at how we can decarbonize the electricity, the electric grid? What if we were to increase renewable energy in the city? That probably would take care of 30% of the emissions. What if we were to, electrify? What if we were to electrify thermal loads? That is, whenever we burn natural gas, propane, or fuel oil for space heating, for water heating, or for drying our clothes, or for cooking. What if we were to, for example, introduce carbon capture technologies through, well, nothing too complicated. What if we were to do it through urban forests? What if we were to plant a lot of trees at the same time that we acquire new technologies to develop, for example, hydrogen in a clean way? And what if we were to implement energy efficiency measures at the same time in buildings, in transportation, and in every aspect of the economy? Honestly, I believe that will get us pretty much all the way there. That's what we need to do in terms of carbon emissions. So we have a plan, and this is a 10-year plan. It's going to be complicated. And actually, right now, it becomes an 8-year plan where we need to think about, how we can create incentives for people to participate in this. How can we, the government, show that we have, the right commitment, and not only the government, but every major stakeholder in the community has the commitment to make this happen. And how can we rely on regulation just to fine-tune the strategy? And we need to think about it in terms of, we need to get rid of emissions because that's what's causing climate change. But at the same time, climate change is here. So there is an element of adaptation. We need to figure out how to deal with what is already happening. And because of what's already happening, we need to make sure that, we're a resilient community, that, if we have a power outage, we're not going to freeze today. We need to think about how we can solve all these issues. So we're proposing, a strategy that has 5 key components. One of them is, constant data collection, to understand where we are at. Also, high levels of efficiency in every aspect of the economy, including waste management, for example, food systems, but also looking at buildings, looking at transportation. What if we were to focus a lot on introducing renewables decentralizing these energy assets, and using a lot of new technologies, to add flexibility or smart controls to the way we use electricity in buildings. That is, what if we were to, decarbonize, and what if we were to electrify everything that we can electrify, including buildings and transportation, and what if we were to do carbon capture? As I mentioned before, this is the way we can get there. I mean, it is hard because it's going to cost a ton of money. It's going to cost $2 billion. That is just a lot of money. But, we could do this. And what I believe is necessary, because all of this is, in economic terms, we can see what we need to do. Maybe in social terms, we kind of know what to do. But what if we were to be very clear in terms of what needs to happen? What if we were to say everything that we're going to do, it has to go through a lens of climate justice? What if we, for everything that we do, we were to look at, okay, is this fair? Is this just? Is this for everybody or just for a few? What if we were to think about innovation just as a way of enabling economic development? What if we were to use innovation to create new industries and create new jobs? What if we were to create, a financial model that is only to enable this innovation for economic development and climate justice? What if we were to engage people in a different way? Well, those are the key pillars of the Green New Deal. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to work with you, work with everybody, and make something happen. But we are trying in a way that nobody has tried before. And this has to be very clear. Nobody has ever done what we're trying to do here. And we're a special community, but we're not that different. We're not that special. We may not succeed at everything that we're doing, but we're going to try all these, and we may succeed, but it may be slightly different from what we're planning to do. But right now, what we need to do is to get going. We need to start. We're going to do this, and we're going to divide the work. We're going to rely heavily on the community, to help us understand better what climate justice really means to them, and ways of educating and engaging, and share a little bit of the responsibility through a shared governance model. And we're also going to talk to others that are trying this at the regional and international level to identify ways of innovating and promoting economic development while at the same time unlocking financial flows. We have a plan that we're going to implement in the next 10 years. We're going to start with, obviously we need a climate action plan that is in the works. We believe it's going to take us, still a little bit more in order to have our actual climate action plan. But we're not waiting for this to be ready to get going. We're at the same time working on our Justice 50 model, because we believe that, what if we were to explicitly, redirect 50% of the benefits, economic, social, environmental benefits? What if we were to make sure that 50% of all of those resources are redirected to take care of the needs of the low and moderate income communities that we have in Ithaca? They may account for probably 20 to 25% of all of us, but at least 50% of what we have has to go in that direction. That's the only way we're going to level the playing field, right? We are also working very heavily on developing a new workforce, because, after the pandemic, things changed so much. We need to think about it differently. We need to really abandon all ideas, take on new ideas, and start thinking, how can I develop not only a local, a regional, green workforce? How can I create 1,000 jobs out of this strategy? We're also looking at how do we mitigate risks, because what we need to make sure is that, if another pandemic hits, or climate change gets worse, or we have some unexpected economic crisis, that our community is going to be resilient. What if we were to mitigate all this risk? What if we were to identify ways of offering, something attractive to private, public, philanthropic investors, that they could come and work with us? We're also looking at, implementing a model of shared governance. And the first step is to have 1,000 conversations with you. Because if we have 1,000 conversations with you together, we're going to figure out what we can do as a society, what we can do together to make the Green New Deal a reality. But then we're going to get, after these really foundational elements of the Ithaca Green New Deal, we're going to start working on infrastructure. We're going to move away from fossil fuel electricity, and we're going to implement a community choice aggregation model that would allow us to have carbon-free electricity. We're going to deploy renewable energy, and we're looking at different ways of deploying solar technology all over the city. We're trying to find ways of doing this, and I keep on saying the city because, we're starting there. But the idea is for us to expand beyond the city, and we're working together with the town of Ithaca. We're working together with other municipalities, with the county. But, this has to work for everybody beyond the county even. We're also starting to work on energy efficiency and electrification. We are trying to find a way of making this happen. We're trying to guarantee that all 6,000 buildings that we have in the city of Ithaca are going to be energy efficient. That is, we may require to do retrofitting, that they are also electrified. That is, it may be required to substitute something that uses natural gas with something that uses only electricity, for example, heat pumps for space heating or water heating. We're also looking at, not everything can be electrified. There are limits in terms of the energy density and limits in terms of the flow of energy that we can have. And some, for example, heavy duty vehicles need an alternative and they cannot be electrified. Likely, it will be very difficult to electrify. So we need to figure out, for example, if they can work with hydrogen. We need to deploy electric vehicle infrastructure, and for two-wheel and four-wheel vehicles, mostly light and medium-duty electric vehicles. I believe that we have a way of doing this, and we're working on that. We're also looking at how we can do increase, the number of trees that we have in the city, develop further urban forests, and eventually include carbon capture technologies. We're looking at waste management, both material and organic waste management. We're also looking at food systems, because what we need to do is to first do source reduction so we can eventually aspire to have a zero waste city. Right now, one thing that is very popular is our green building policy. So I just want to say that, we're looking at, as we passed an energy code supplement that we are hoping that is going to lead to carbon neutral new constructions and renovations. But we're going to start also with the energy efficiency retrofitting and electrification of buildings in the city, which is going to be, one more element together with a new benchmark law that is going to allow us to identify a carbon emissions baseline so we can eventually have a new code for building performance standard. And the idea is that once we implement this, once again, this comprehensive green building policy in a way that everybody can see how we're making progress, then we'll be able to see the whole thing coming to reality one day. So very quickly, what we mean with carbon neutral buildings, and this is something that's going to come up and that's been asked a million times. We're talking about buildings where design, construction, and operations do not contribute to greenhouse gas emissions. And this is important because right now we're tackling design, we're tackling construction, we're tackling operations, but then there are elements of deconstruction, for example, and there are groups, the Circular Construction Lab at Cornell, for example, they're looking at this specifically together with Historic Ithaca, the Christopherson Center. A lot of people are looking at this because it is also an important part. So I stole this image from a NYSERDA presentation because I think it's just really good. It shows what we're talking about. It shows that this is a carbon neutral building, one where we have a high performance envelope. That is, there is no energy leaks. We have high performance windows, and we have also heat pumps, electric heat pumps instead of natural gas, propane, or fuel oil. Probably buildings that could have solar energy, that could have efficient electric water systems, and also could have even storage at some point, or a charging station for an electric vehicle. We're looking for buildings that could be transformed and turned into something that could benefit everybody. This is going to create, just this program is going to create 127,000 jobs in the state of New York. We believe that here in the city, just the first phase is going to create about 400 jobs and eventually up to 1,000 jobs. And we're talking about a community that has 30,000 people. So 1,000 jobs is not a bad number. This is something that we should really try to do. But to do that, we need to be careful, and we need to make sure that we're looking at everything and we're helping everybody. So there is a need to recognize climate justice communities. There is a need to recognize within the Ithaca Green New Deal and its implementation that not only 50% of the benefits are going to go in that direction, but that also we need to comply with what the state government through the CLCPA is doing, with what Justice 40 through by the federal government is doing, but we also need to look at our community in particular. So if we are going to recognize these communities, we need to identify them. We need to figure out what that means. So we can go with a definition that has been already set by the state, by the federal government, but we can actually go farther than that. We can actually think about historical inequities, home ownership, financial inclusion, and a bunch of parameters that are not necessarily considered by the state and the federal government, but that are important to identify those communities in the city of Ithaca that need help to become part of the green economy. So it is our goal to do this through this engagement that we're doing right now. I just want to share with you very quickly that we also take very seriously our international commitment, because we believe that climate change is a problem that everybody has. And the city of Ithaca, the town of Ithaca, Cornell University, we established the Finger Lakes Energy Compact. And what we did was we went to the United Nations and registered our commitment to fight climate change. Very aggressive goals and different actions were presented to the United Nations. They were accepted, they were approved, and now we're on the hook for something spectacular. But this is the way things happen. When you commit to do it, and when you are not really worried about committing in front of an international audience to do the right thing. So that's what we're doing. That's what we're asking of the state government. That's what we're asking of the federal government. So we are going to start doing these things if they don't do it. So right now, the Ithaca Green New Deal is pretty much busy, entertained in developing this program. 1,000 electrified buildings, 1,000 green new jobs, and imagine 1,000 two-wheel and four-wheel electric vehicles in the city. At the same time that we're having 1,000 conversations about the future. What if we were to do this in 1,000 days? Just think about that. It's absolutely crazy, but that's the reason we're doing it. Kennedy put it so well. We're not doing this because it's easy. We're doing it because it's hard. And if it's not us, who is going to do this? So 1,000 sounds like a big number, but I think it's doable. I think it's easy. I think it's something that we can do if we put our minds to it. If we get the money to do this. If we get together to finally execute on a plan. And if we also, get rid of all those old ideas of how things could be and think about how can things be now for everybody to participate in a way that is just and in a way that actually drives progress in the right direction. So that's what the Green New Deal is. And I really love this graffiti from 1968 in Paris. That is basically what the Green New Deal is about. In order to be realistic, we need to demand the impossible. We need to demand the impossible of people, of government, or investors, everybody, because that's the only way we are going to produce change. So with this, I finished the presentation. Some of you have sent some questions. So I'm going to be very happy to answer some of them. If Rebecca, if you can probably help us with, what the questions are.
Yeah, I definitely can, especially because we don't have any questions in the chat right now, which is a little bit surprising. I know there's a little bit of a lag between Zoom and YouTube, so I'm wondering if maybe we want to answer some of the questions that people submitted ahead of time. I know one of the big ones that we hear a lot is about budget, and if we know what the Sustainability Department budget is going to be in 2022. And given that budget, or if you don't know, what are the priorities for any monies that may be in the Sustainability Office?
Well, that is a very good question, and it comes on the right day because today the mayor is gonna, present the budget to Common Council at 6 p.m. People can watch live if they want to connect. The right after COVID budget for the entire, city government is very much restricted. Even though we got some help from the federal government, we did have some revenue loss during COVID. So the budget for the sustainability, but also for the planning department, for everybody is very restricted. So I don't want to go ahead because the mayor needs to present this, Common Council needs to agree, and then the budget will be approved. So at this point, I cannot really comment on an amount. I cannot tell you, what is the amount of money that we have. What we know is, we're going to make use of that money, with different priorities. The first thing is that we need to engage the community. So we need to have a way of reaching out to the community and talking to them, engaging them in conversation. So, a lot of the budget is going to go to those activities, because I believe that we need their input, we need their ideas, and we absolutely need to focus on that. There are other programs, some infrastructure programs that are ongoing, and we're trying to get funding from different sources: the state government, federal government, philanthropic, and private organizations. Park Foundation has been very generous. It has helped us a lot to fund, for example, part of the workforce development program. And I really believe that, we're going to be able to fund everything that we want to do. Right now, we're in the budget process. So until this is completed, we will not really know, what the budget for the Sustainability Office is.
Great, very thorough answer. We do have a comment from Margot saying, "So glad to have you in Ithaca." Luis. And echoing that, this is a lot of information to wade through that Luis just ran through. But if you have questions, please do feel free to submit them via the chat feature on YouTube. Otherwise, we're going to run through a couple more. There are a ton of questions about the electrification program in general. One of which was assuming that some buildings are just too costly to upgrade or to retrofit or otherwise just not worth tossing a bunch of money into. What is the plan for those buildings, and is it required to electrify all buildings?
Well, thanks for that question. Let's start with the last part of the question, right? It is required, it will be required. The state, the CLCPA, they're going to mandate that we move away from natural gas. And, it's going to be a phased approach, but it's going to be a mandate. Eventually, we're going to have to do it. The city of Ithaca, we might go ahead, even before the state demands it and we're going to try to, provide the means for people to, through a phased approach, move away from natural gas, propane, or fuel oil. So there's going to be a need to electrify, absolutely. I really think that, we need to understand how we have been trying to do this. Heat pumps, it is really funny. I was involved in a project with the International Energy Agency a year and a half ago, not too long ago, a year and a half ago. And we were involved in a discussion. There is this document called Energy Technologies Perspective, where we actually defined the state of maturity for some of the technologies that we're using today. And we were discussing heat pumps, and we decided to categorize heat pumps as not a mature technology, because at the time, things were changing, things were evolving, things were more expensive. But in the last year and a half, we had so much progress. I would say it's a mature technology. Now it is cheaper. But the approach we were following before was that of getting, for example, grants from the state. So these grants could go to, help people to substitute thermal loads with electric alternatives. And I think that's good. But if you don't do the retrofitting, if you don't do the energy efficiency, if you don't do the two things together, then, the savings are never going to materialize. And it's going to be just a very expensive program. So that is one. And then the other is, this is a very expensive process. And the way we were doing it, we were probably, transforming, if we're lucky, 50 buildings a year. So yeah, if you do that, then, how many years is going to take for us to transform all 6,000 buildings? So, what we decided in the city is like, we need to have a very large scale project. We need to figure out how to pay for it. And we're trying to cover as much as we can. I think we're going to find some special cases where there's going to be some buildings that there is no way of, paying for retrofitting and electrification. I think it's going to be so minimal that we'll have to deal with them, as they come. But for the rest, what we're going to have are, a bunch of incentives, different programs that we're going to use so people can, adopt these technologies and also retrofit without really having to incur in any extra costs compared to what they do today. But that's what we need to do. I mean, this is an effort that we're asking people to do, and we're asking them to act, sooner rather than later.
Great, thank you. The Ithaca Fire Department just showed their appreciation for the Green New Deal with their sirens blaring past my house. So I missed some of that, but I assume you answered some of this next question is, how will this affect, for example, like tenants' rents? Would those increases, are there any protections for rental units and for tenants? And is it possible that tenants might save money, or that building owners will save money, or maybe both?
We're going to be very careful to make sure that we do this only when it makes sense. So if through retrofitting and electrification, we manage to save some money, then we're going to use the savings to pay for the money used and upfronted to pay for these improvements. I think at the okay, could you repeat the question? I think I'm missing a point here.
Sure, yeah. I mean, you were talking a little bit about making sure that there are enough incentives that it's very affordable for people to retrofit or otherwise electrify their buildings. How will that be passed on to tenants? Yes, correct.
Yes, thank you. Because I got lost in my thinking. I was like, oh God, this is so complicated. So anyway, this has to make sense. And once it makes sense, like whoever pays for the utility bill, is the person who needs to enjoy the benefits of this, the economic benefits. It could be, the landlord that rocks into rent, or it could be the tenant. However, it's the building owner's decision to participate in the program with agreement of the tenant. So if the tenant doesn't want to participate in the program and the building owner wants to participate, they'll have to negotiate. If the tenant wants and the building owner doesn't want, they have to negotiate. And, we'll support those who really want to do this. So we'll help with those negotiations. But then, for example, I believe it's going to be an amazing program that will allow people to access financial products that were not available before. So if you do that, there's a lot of benefits. If I'm a building owner, I'm going to have, improve the property value just by doing this. But we're going to have agreements that if you rent these, then you're not really going to be able to increase the rent beyond inflation, what you do every year, because, it would be easier now that I improve with money that I use from these guys because my tenant wants, and now I want to increase the rent. No, we're going to try to prevent that. But at the same time, and this is something that Common Council needs to decide, but, there's a possibility that we could have a tax abatement. So building owners don't have to pay more tax because now their property is value higher. So, we're trying to do everything that we can to make sure that, rents don't go up, that tax bill doesn't go up, and at the same time, people participate in this program.
Great, thank you. And while we're on the topic of financing, there is a question that I think has come up quite a few times of as far as the RFP that you put out into the world, why were you going with capitalist financing versus something else?
Well, if anybody has an alternative, I'm very happy to listen. The reality is, and I started this presentation by saying, we need to change the way we think about the world. And here's the thing, right? When we had the financial crisis in 2008 and 2009, it happened because we had some very greedy people in Wall Street. I mean, that is the truth. There's no way around it. And what happened was these financial institutions, suffered. They went under. But they had insurance. So the insurance companies covered, but then the insurance couldn't cover anymore, so they went under. And then there was, a set of organizations called reinsurance that were behind these guys. So, they put the money, then Obama and Trudeau and everybody had a relief package to help them, get back on their feet. And eventually the money made it back to those that funded, the companies that stay alive. So what that means is a lot of the money was concentrated somewhere else. And these somewhere else are private equity firms, financial institutions. A lot of these are real estate funds, and some of them are reinsurance companies. So why not going back to them? They got the money from our taxes initially to do this. So now we're going back to them. We're using this money to make this happen. And it is a very interesting thing to say and do. A lot of the time, we don't really ask these questions when we have a credit card and, that is run by a bank. But what we're trying to do here is to be responsible. We're looking at private sources because I believe it's the only way we can pay for this. But at the same time, we're not mortgaging the town. We're not telling people, oh yeah, you give me money and I'll pay this 3 times. No, we're actually, convincing investors that, it's in their own benefit to be part of this program, even though they're not going to make a huge return. And we can structure this in a way that, it benefits everybody and nobody loses in the process. But that includes investors. But we're being very responsible. And, if anybody wants to talk about this in detail, I'll be very happy to talk to them. But there is no way the federal government, the state government, the municipality can pay for this. And we cannot expect or ask people to pay for it. So we need to find ways of financing a program like this. And honestly, living off grants is not an alternative because, we don't have the scale that we need for this transformation.
Great, thank you. And yes, please do, if you have related questions or unrelated questions, please do continue to toss them our way. We're running up against time, but I do want to ask one more question that I think is a good one to end on. Lots of people asking about how they can find up-to-date information, both on the status of the Green New Deal and if there's a place, or there will be a place where we'll be tracking progress of electrification within the city, and how can that be accessed?
Well, the electrification program is not official yet. It has to be approved by Common Council. Once it's approved by Common Council, we're going to do a number of things. There's going to be a special website where you're going to have information, up-to-date information on what is happening, who's doing what. We're going to be very transparent in terms of all the process and everything that we're doing. So there's going to be a website once it becomes official. There's going to be an outreach program where we're going to share all the information that we have. And so if anybody's interested in the electrification program, we can talk about all the elements, even the financial elements. And right now, what we have is IthacaGreenNewDeal.org, where people can go and see basic information on the Green New Deal. That website is going to be updated. We're in the process of updating it. There is a lot of information already there that it hasn't been published yet. And that has to do with our own capacity to implement and document and then publish what we're documenting. But, we're getting better at that. And we're going to share with everybody, every step of any way we can make progress. There is also, the Climate Reality Project. They are working with other organizations in developing a scorecard. This scorecard is going to be completely independent of us who are charged with implementing the Green New Deal. And they're going to keep track of all our progress. And they're going to have a big red card if we're not making progress. They're going to have a yellow card if we're just moving along. They're going to have a green card whenever we meet our goals. So, there's going to be some pressure also. But also somebody from the community has, somehow decided that they're going to be constantly monitoring progress and sharing that with the community. So hopefully that's all going to be available within the next month.
Great, thank you. I know we have a bunch of other questions that people submitted, but I'm going to say let's put a pin in them because we will have conversations coming up during this series that address specifically community choice aggregation, district geothermal, those sort of things. So we won't dig into that today, but is there any last minute comments, Luis, that you want to add?
I just want to say, on one hand, thank you, everybody. There is such an engagement, so many people involved in the Ithaca Green New Deal. And it is great to see that. I haven't met everybody face to face. I haven't been able to, be with everybody explaining in person what the Green New Deal is. However, there is a lot of engagement, and I really, really appreciate that. And Rebecca, Nick, and I are tasked with its implementation, but it doesn't mean we're going to do it alone. We're going to do it without consulting with you. So, feel free to participate and engage. I think this is one of the hardest things that you'll ever do, but it's also one of the things that will make you proud the rest of your life. Once we see in 10 years that we achieved the greatest transformation this city has ever seen, you're going to be proud of being part of the present, the past, and the future. So thank you for your time, Rebecca. Thank you for driving this. And I appreciate everybody who's been watching.
Amazing. Perfect way to end. Thank you, everybody. We will see you in 2 weeks.